Speaking of DraftKings, the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy is Ashton Jeanty from Boise State, who's just having a monster year. Every time you turn him on the game and you see him rushing for 150 to 200 yards a game, rattling off another 50 to 70-yard touchdown run, like he's been phenomenal, the running back for Boise State. And so, the conversation becomes who else could be in consideration. Dillon Gabriel is second on the list from DraftKings, as pointed out by Brady, had the game of his career against Ohio State over the weekend. And another guy who may be the best player in college football is Travis Hunter from Colorado. And he spoke recently with the Out of Pocket podcast about his Heisman consideration.
Y'all see Ashton Jeanty, but it's not like we haven't seen a running back that's good.
All right.
We haven't seen a player that plays both ways. And I'm going to keep saying that. It's like he have 95 carries?
Yeah.
For 1,000 yards?
Yeah.
If I had 95 catches, how much yards you think I have?
Okay.
So I'm trying to tell him, if I had 95 targets on defense, what you think I'll have?
Right. Oh.
If I had 95 catches on offense, what you think I'll have? So I try to tell you, he got double the touches I got on the offensive side of the ball, and I still have defensive stats that's still crazy, and we only in week 6.
Yeah.
So, I'm not going to argue about it.
So it's one way to campaign for your name.
Yeah. So look, Travis Hunter is a rare athlete, rare player that we've seen in college football. What he's doing in some instances is unprecedented in a way. I mean, look, Miles Jack played both ways during his time at UCLA, Shaq Thompson at Washington. You can go back to the Chris Gamble days. I don't know that anyone's done it quite as frequent as he has. Now, he got injured last year. He got injured this past week versus Kansas State, missed some time. So that snap count, when it goes down, it doesn't help as much. And part of the issue is he's so good, teams don't really want to throw at him. So it's hard to then have defensive stats. The offensive stats will be there, but again, it hurts when he gets hurt. Here's the problem with his entire premise and his discussion or argument, okay? He actually made the case for why Ashton Jeanty should win the Heisman, okay? This is why. He talked about if he had 95 receptions. Okay, well, when you're throwing the football, it's easier to have more yards per reception. Can everyone agree on that?
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. He's averaging 12 yards per catch, which is, fine. It's not leading their team. In fact, as far as the average, he's the leading receiver on the team in that regard, but it's not leading in any way. Ashton Jeanty averages 10 yards per rushing attempt. That is one of the most ridiculous stats. And it's why he's in the lead right now for the Heisman, also with 17 touchdowns. So yes, he's got 126 rushing attempts, but that's kind of how it works, right? You tend to run the football more and get more touches as a running back. And it's much harder, by the way, to average a yards per carry like that. In most cases, he is double some of the best running backs in college football who are averaging 4 or 5 yards per attempt. He is averaging a first down every time he touches the football. That is absurd. And it's one of the reasons why, you can't do the whole, well, if I had 95 receptions, because it's well, yeah, you should have more yards if you have 95 receptions. You could run 40 yards downfield, turn around, catch the football. In order for him to run 40 yards downfield, he has to run through dudes to get there for the most part. And that's what's even more impressive about it. If he's averaging 10 yards per attempt, which he is, 7 yards per attempt are coming after contact. So think about that. He's hitting someone maybe 3 yards downfield, let's say on average. And he's getting 7 more yards after that on average as part of that. So I'm not sure that's the best argument to be made for a Heisman candidacy if you're Travis Hunter to try to do a touch for touch comparison when you're playing wide receiver versus a guy who's playing running back. So look, they're both very deserving of the award. Obviously different players, different positions. But I would stick to the narrative of hey man, I'm a two-way player full time like this, and hopefully he stays healthy, and hopefully Colorado stays in the hunt for the Big 12, because it feels like it's gonna be hard for them to make a playoff spot unless they win the conference. Boise, on the other hand, may be that group of 5 team that can win their conference and then make it into the playoff. And if they do, that's even more momentum for Ashton Jeanty to win the Heisman.
I mean, I didn't even pay attention to Jeanty until I heard you guys talking about him, and since I've done some film review on him, and have caught a game since learning about him. I mean, the kid is pretty special in what he is that he's able to do, and he's drawing comparisons. People are putting up the graphic of how quickly Barry Sanders got to the yardage he did his Heisman years versus what Jeanty is doing right now, and it's pretty staggering to see what his level of success has been this season. As far as him utilizing the conversation of going both ways, that's to some people that might it is a great feat to be able to play both ways at the college level, but I think people should also understand that that's something that a coach decides to do. That's generally, if I'm looking at this the right way, Colorado may not have enough talent where having as talented a player as Travis Hunter is, that you don't use him both ways. The reality of it is that there are a ton of guys that could go both ways that come out of high school. In fact, most players play both ways coming out of high school, going into college. It's the fact of the matter that you have 100+ guys on a roster and you're not needed to play both ways is generally the reason. Like, you look at what Charles Woodson did. Did they need him on both sides of the ball? Did they need him to do special teams? Not necessarily, but they got a boost by using Charles Woodson. Did they need Champ Bailey to do the same thing that Charles Woodson did when he was at Georgia? No, they didn't need him to do it. But did it give them an advantage? Maybe. Maybe it did. But that was a coach's decision. That's a coach's decision because there are a ton of guys that could go both ways. So I feel like that's an overstated piece of it, is that, oh, well, I go both ways, this, that, and the other. It's because they chose to play you both ways. It's because that is, and what it looks like at Colorado, it's necessary for him to go both ways. But I don't see that as like, yeah, you have success on both sides of the ball, but don't make it seem like, well, I'm doing something that other people can't do. It's what they've chose to do with you, and you're making the best of it. So to me, I feel like, yeah, it's great to be able to say you play both ways and you're being impactful on both sides of the field. But to me, I think that it still comes down to, okay, he has made some phenomenal plays on both sides of the ball. But if he doesn't get enough burn because they're not going to go out his side of the field, that's just what it is. That's a part of it. If he doesn't get it on the offensive side of the ball where they're feeding him the ball to get him those yardage, you can't sit there and say, well, I'm so good, I don't get those targets. They're not throwing the ball my way when I'm on defense. That's not going to go into, in my estimation, that's not going to go into the consideration of you being a Heisman candidate, especially if you're not competing for a national title. Like, you think about it, Charles Woodson got the Heisman over a Peyton Manning in that year, and it's only because they went undefeated and they won it all. Like, right. Think about that. There's a lot of phenomenons that hit when Charles Woodson went both ways in college.
You know what I think's cool about this whole thing, though? The fact that a guy from Boise State and Colorado are in the top 3 of the Heisman.
Well, they're talking about him going number 1 overall, right?
Yeah, like
it's like speculation of Shedeur going number 1. Again, there's not, and I mean, that's Colorado. I don't think that this is, I don't want to make this like this is an indictment on Travis Hunter at all. I'm not attacking Travis Hunter. He is well deserving of the accolades, and so is Jeanty. They're definitely deserving of their accolades. I'm just saying, I've just put some perspective on it. Is what I would say. That's all. Like, if they were winning, if they were competing, if they were still undefeated, and they're competing for a national title, then maybe they're not targeting their best receiver and they're losing the games because look at their total yardage as an offense or different things like that. But this isn't a team that's competing for a national title. So I think that the level of expectation is different on looking at what the performance is. Maybe for right or for wrong, I don't know, but I just think it's different. If they're undefeated, we're looking at Travis Hunter much differently. His coverage is much different if they're undefeated and they're on a march for a national title or going to the playoffs. Like, do we think this team is going to make the playoffs? How good is this team? And if this team isn't that good,
like I said, they're going to have to win the Big 12 because they've already got a couple losses now, and that's the tough part. Is I don't know that you're going to get a lot of momentum for teams that have 2, maybe even 3 losses if they aren't playing in the Big 10 or SEC, and if they aren't at least playing in the conference championship game, which, there's a lot of parity in the Big 12. I will say this, like if there's any conference that you can maybe make a case for, maybe it is the Big 12 because there's so much parity. I mean, there's like 4 or 5 teams you can make the case that still are in the running to win it. I mean, one of the biggest games this weekend is actually in Cincinnati, Ohio. It's ASU taking on the University of Cincinnati, and Arizona State's going to be without their starting quarterback, Sam Leavitt, who is banged up. So Jeff Sims, the Nebraska transfer, who was formerly at Georgia Tech, so it's his 3rd school now, he'll actually start for Arizona State. But this is huge for Arizona State staying in the race. And even in conference play for Cincinnati still hanging around as well. Despite their overall record, they're still in the mix via conference play. So it's kind of weird right now because we're in the midst of it. But outside of like the big games, as far as top 25 matched up teams, you will not find more parity or more fun matchups than in the Big 12 right now in college football.